Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, you're well, guys. So, today I'm going to talk about a hot topic that's impacting our industry. And you remember I did a video similar to this about 6 months ago where I spoke about Kpmg and the comments that were made by their then chairman on unconscious bias. And inshallah, going forward, I want to talk more regularly about topics impacting the industry because A, it gives you some commercial awareness, B, some potential topics or questions that may come from this that you can ask in the interview. And C, it also gives me the opportunity to add my 2 pence as well to the topic. Now, today I am going to speak about Kpmg again, but I just want to make clear, guys, I have no affiliation with them. And inshallah, going forward, I will also post videos about topics impacting other firms and companies as well. But this week, Kpmg announced that they've set targets in place to recruit more senior staff at a director and partner level who come from a working class background. So given my own background, I thought this topic was very relevant to my channel, and inshallah in the description below I've also left a couple of links to relevant articles so you can verify what I talk about in this video. So this all started when Kpmg ran a diversity survey, and it was non-mandatory, but they received over 10,000 responses from their employees. And as part of this survey, they asked questions around inclusion and diversity. And one of those questions focused on an employee's background. So what sort of role did their parents perform? In this survey, you were defined as coming from a working class background if your parents did a manual, repetitive job such as a plumber, electrician, or a van driver. As part of the results, Kpmg identified that 23% of its partners and 20% of its directors came from a working class background. And they also identified that those from a working class background were likely to pay paid around 9% less than those whose parents came from a higher professional, administrative, or managerial type career. Following those results, Kpmg announced this week that they'd set themselves a target that 29% of their partners and directors should come from a working class background by 2030. So Kpmg have received hugely positive responses in the media from charities who work in the social mobility space. I myself have seen a lot of positive comments on LinkedIn, and honestly it's well deserved for two key reasons. Firstly, a lot of companies are actually struggling with data around inclusion and diversity because the questions are really personal. Imagine if you joined a firm or an organization and you were being asked, oh, what was your household income when you were growing up? Or what job did your parents do? You'd probably feel like, oh, why is this necessary? I don't want to fill this in. This is an intrusion on my privacy. So then for Kpmg to not only build a survey, but also receive 10,000 responses where they've now generated valuable data that they can use to address issues around inclusion and diversity, the efforts there have to be commended. And secondly, they're the first large organization to bring a target like this in place. So the fact that they're leading the way deserves recognition. However, I don't agree with their approach entirely, and inshallah you'll understand why. So firstly, I'm not a big fan of targets. 30% of directors should be this, 10% of managers should be this. I would never want to get promoted because of the color of my skin, because my dad's a taxi driver, or because I come from a certain type of socioeconomic background. I would want to get promoted because I'm the best person for the job following a competitive process. Now imagine getting promoted after a target like this is announced. Aren't some of your colleagues going to think, oh, he only got promoted because he's black? Or she only got promoted because she's a woman? There's a risk that with targets like this, they may be associated with positive discrimination. And I would never want to be in a position where I feel like my credibility and abilities are being undermined by this. I just want to expand on this, guys, because I don't want to come across as negative. We do need to do work to increase representation from underrepresented groups in certain roles and careers. However, I think the focus shouldn't be on targets, but we should be focusing on bridging the gap, i.e. identifying reasons why people from certain groups are behind others in terms of their career, and then bridge that gap by bringing in training, coaching, mentoring, or whatever else is needed so the playing field is leveled. Then once we've leveled the playing field, the opportunity, promotion, transfer, secondment, whatever it is, should go to the best candidate. Bridging the gap is where firms and companies will struggle because everyone is so diverse. You could have two people who grew up next to each other, their parents doing the same type of job, they went to the same school, same socioeconomic background, same culture, religion maybe, but actually they could be completely different in terms of their career progression and their development needs. The second reason is that we're associating negative thinking with certain career options. So if we take a plumber as an example, that could be seen as quite entrepreneurial. You're working for yourself and you could be making good money where you can afford to send your children to private school. Equally, more recently with HGV drivers, we know there's a massive shortage currently. So a lot of drivers are being offered bonuses, increased salaries, and other financial incentives. So actually, they could be making a really good wage and again, can afford luxuries for their children. So in my head, it doesn't matter if your parents are in a manual trade. If they're doing really well and could afford luxuries for you, then you're no longer from a lower socioeconomic background. What do you guys think? The final reason, which I'd say is the most important, is that I think the focus is on the wrong end of the scale. So they're focusing at the highest level, which is partner and director. Whereas I think that their focus should be on the opposite side at the early careers level. That's because when you get to say senior manager level and you're looking for that promotion to director, whether your mum was a plumber or your dad was an electrician shouldn't really matter. The fact that you've got to senior manager level means you're no longer from a working class background. I'm going to use myself as an example because I meet the definition of coming from a working class background. So my dad's a taxi driver. And alhamdulillah, when I was growing up, I may have been disadvantaged. I may have faced lack of career opportunities, lack of guidance, lack of ambition, whatever the metrics are. Alhamdulillah, I am happy with my childhood, but by definition, I was from a lower socioeconomic background. Now, 10 years on, alhamdulillah, I'm a chartered accountant. I've got the ACA. I'm a manager with direct reports. I work a good role in a large company. I've traveled nationally and internationally. The list goes on. But the point is, whatever disadvantages I faced in my childhood as a result of me coming from a working class background no longer apply. They're completely gone. So when I go for a promotion or whatever my future career plans are, the fact that my dad was a taxi driver shouldn't have any bearing on that decision. My dad was the one who was working class, right? He was the taxi driver. He was the one who struggled. Now I'm considered to be a professional. However, I'd say at the early careers level, you should potentially take background into account because that's the beginning of your career and you may be facing huge impacts because of the disadvantages that you had. And there, you may require more coaching, mentoring, training, other opportunities to overcome and address those impacts. Final thing I want to say, guys, is I'm not an expert on inclusion and diversity. No one is. This is just my own opinion. I still think Kpmg have done a great job taking the lead on this. No one's going to get it right first time. So really well done to them for taking the lead on this. And inshallah, before I go, as always, if you have any questions or queries, please feel free to comment below or message me on Instagram.